Juraj Slafkovsky says that the Montreal Canadiens didn't even talk to him about not sending him to the World Juniors. We'll be getting into that, plus Joel Edmundson expresses his desire to stay in Montreal. We'll be talking about whether or not that's a good or a bad thing. And finally, Cole Caufield is in some elite company with a stat that we're going to get into, so you don't want to miss anything we have to say on this edition of Habs Digest. Hello, bonjour, ahoy, and welcome to today's news edition of Habs Digest. I'm your host, Josh Gosse, alongside my co-host, Jesse Poirier. And before we get into the video, guys, quick reminder to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment. It helps us out in the algorithm. We love your guys' support. We have daily content, so if you haven't subbed already, do it now. Jesse, first topic today, it's an interesting one. Juraj Slafkovsky, there was an article posted today, and it was just called La Blog de Slafkovsky, or Slafkovsky's blog, where he kind of goes into some stuff he's been doing with Montreal, what his life has been like in the recent weeks, talking about how, he was loving watching the World Juniors on TV when he was in Nashville. There's a bunch of other stuff. It's a cool read, but one passage stood out to me, and it was this one. Now, Jesse, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong on this translation, but what I'm garnering from this is Même qu'on ne m'a jamais parlé de la possibilité de joindre l'équipe junior de mon pays, says that they didn't even talk to him about the possibility of letting him go to Team Slovakia. But he says he just wanted to keep his place with the Habs. He loves representing his team in international competitions, Team Slovakia, but he was focused on staying in the NHL and moving up in the Habs lineup. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on that translation, but do you think it's a bit strange that they didn't even talk to him about sending him to Team Slovakia?
It's interesting. Maybe it could have been worth having a conversation. We see that Kent Hughes is very open, with players and everything else like that. But I think if anything, Josh, it's just a compliment, is that we believe in you. We believe in your development. And even though, maybe we're not, we're not having maybe as great of a season as maybe would have liked to hope, sure. Both in terms of the team and Slafkovsky personally, that we still believe in him. Because I think, once we start seeing certain players coming back from injury, Monahan's starting to get close now, because I think that's a much better fit. I think Slav needs to play higher up in the lineup on a second line, because it's not a fair evaluation at this point on him. He hasn't had a chance to play, really higher up in the lineup with True. Really players that suit him really well. So I think that, Marty St. Louis, Kent Hughes, they feel the same way. So they said, we don't even really need to have this conversation. He's here. We want him here.
Yeah, and if you read through the rest of it and you listen to some of his interviews as well, he's expressed the desire to stay with Montreal through that period. This is, don't get us wrong, this is not him saying, I'm upset that they didn't talk to me. I think you're right, Jesse. I think it's a way of him saying, you know what, they wanted me here so bad, they just didn't even think it was a possibility. They're like, no, you're staying with Montreal, you're getting your development, and I think he's very much okay with that. At least that's the tone that I got from this article, and I think it's a good thing, and I think you make a great point, Jesse. Something we've mentioned a lot before is that Slafkovsky's been playing with so many different line mates. Not only different line mates, 13, 14 different line combinations he's played with now, but also line mates that don't necessarily suit his style of play, like a defensive center who doesn't get a lot of points in Jake Evans for a chunk of the season, and now playing with a more defensive, slower-paced guy in Dvorak, when he really would thrive next to a playmaker like Monahan. So, do you think when Monahan comes back, it seems to be within the next week or two, do you think that Coach St. Louis will just straight up put Slav with Monahan, since we've seen Slafkovsky already on the second line in recent games?
I will. I think that he's definitely here to stay on the second line, and I think we're just going to really see him flourish in the second half of the season with those line mates.
I hope so. I have high hopes for Slav. I think it's great he stayed with the Habs. Even if he had a couple of dud games, it's all a learning curve. The kid is 18 years old. There are guys older than him at the World Juniors, so we have tons of hope for him. Not a bad thing. Just I wanted to give you guys a little update on that. So topic number 2 today. Another sort of update, an interesting thing, because we've been talking about Joel Edmundson a lot in recent videos because there's been a lot of trade rumors around him, especially to the Edmonton Oilers and really any team that wants a nice, solid Stanley Cup caliber, Stanley Cup experienced defenseman. But an article for The Athletic came out, and they say here, if you skip the first part, golden rule, stay away from Twitter. Good advice for anyone, really. But what Edmundson did, however, was express to the team his wish to stay in Montreal and the fact that he loved playing for the Canadiens. So the channels of the communication with general manager Kent Hughes are open. Quote, Kent actually does a good job of talking to a couple of us and just tells us what's on his mind. Communication is big, and I think that it just helps us relax a bit and just focus on playing with this team. I'm pushing everything aside on that side. I'm just focusing on the team right now. It's all I can do. Jesse, we've talked a lot about Joel Edmundson potentially getting shipped out, but with him expressing his desire to stay with Montreal, he's only got a $3.5 million cap hit. He's clearly one of the leaders on the team, saying that Kent Hughes really relays the information only to a few of them. Is there a world where we think we should keep him? I know you've tossed that idea out there for a little while, but do you think it could do our young guys some good to keep a guy like Edmundson around?
It will, until we kind of develop a little bit further, because, if we can get him on maybe like a 2-year deal, I think that would allow our time because we have so many younger defensemen too, and they're going to need slots as well. So I think, if we could do that, because it's not every day where you find somebody that is a leader, loves the city of Montreal, wants to stay here, and has won a Stanley Cup in the past as well. So I think, he's a great person to have in the locker room.
Great person, great leader. You see a lot of guys praise him. And earlier in the season, when he was just starting to come back from his injury, he had a quote saying how great the locker room atmosphere was, how much fun he had going to the rink with these guys every single day. Even in this Athletic article, he says, every day when he comes back to the rink, even if he goes home frustrated one night, he comes back with a smile. And Coach St. Louis was also asked about Joel Edmundson, and he said, no, some fans are saying that Edmondson's playing bad, but no, he said, I cannot with any reasonable level of confidence say that Joel Edmondson's having a bad season. Yeah, he's had some bad plays here and there. Maybe he's not as good as he was a couple of years ago, but he's our boy, right, Jesse? He's been here through the highs of the highs when we made the Stanley Cup Finals and the lowest of the lows. So maybe he doesn't have a long-term prospect on the left side when we have guys like Xhekaj, we have guys like Jordan Harris, but I think keeping him around for a little bit could be beneficial. Final topic, Jesse. We got this nuts Cole Caufield stat. Well, let's just get straight into it. Let's look at this. These are the fewest games to 50 career goals for skaters to debut with Montreal since 1942-43. Of course, Maurice Richard is up there, number one. 76 games played, 50 goals. Great. Jean Béliveau, Bernie Geoffrion, and then Cole Caufield, the fourth fastest to 50 goals for a player that debuted with the Habs, basically in history, in the original 6 era and onward. What's your takeaway from this stat? Just let it all out.
It's really, really amazing. To be only 3 games behind Boom Geoffrion for, quickest to 50 goals. I think that Cole Caufield can be better than Nick Suzuki. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have thought this, at the beginning of the year, but I'm just watching him play. He's really that spark plug that we really need. If he's this young and he's already kind of teetering on getting 50 goals per year with Marty St. Louis, I think he's just going to get better. And a big reason that I feel like this, Josh, is I feel like the one part of Cole Caufield's game that is lacking, it's quite obvious, right? Mm-hmm. It's strength. Yeah. But one thing that's going to happen with him is as he's going to get older, he's going to get more and more that man strength. Yeah. So the one part of his weakness, then was his experience just to see the ice. We see, we've compared him to Ovechkin before, and I'm not saying, Ovechkin's possibly the greatest, player to ever play the game. It's like he's trending in that direction. Anyway, so I'm not saying Cole Caufield, but I'm saying that he can definitely be in that category. Cole Caufield can score, can make multiple 50-goal seasons. And if you got a player that's that dynamic on your team, he might just end up being our best player.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's weird. I think he could be better than Suzuki. Now, Suzuki, I don't think there's any doubt he's a better 200-foot player, especially right now, especially just because of his defensive end, his penalty-killing skills. But I don't see why Caufield can't develop that, and especially if he becomes an elite 50-goal scorer multiple times, every team values a guy like that so highly. So it's an interesting take. I don't think you're wrong. I think it's very interesting. What are your thoughts on seeing those names there? Let me bring it up again. Maurice Richard, Jean Béliveau, Bernie Geoffrion, and Guy Lafleur. Caufield is fourth among those guys. Do you think that when it's all said and done, his name in the Habs ranks could be up there with those guys, or is that pushing it? Those are some Habs legends, maybe a tier below, but isn't it kind of crazy that he's already being compared to 4 of the biggest names in Habs history?
It is crazy because we have an amazing history. These are all amazing, legendary players in their own right. So just to be considered in amongst them at this point in time, has to be a huge boost to his confidence. But he's a happy-go-lucky kid. I think he's confident at the same time. He keeps a level head. But, this just bodes so well. It's really amazing to see what he's going to do in the future. I've seen in some threads, in Reddit, people are doing some calculations, though, and how he's trending. And they're saying that, yes, he could possibly pass 1 or 2 guys on this list. Isn't that crazy, Josh?
Oh, it's nuts. And again, I feel like we might be getting a little ahead of ourselves because we're so excited about him. He looks like he has all the skill in the world, and we're going to have to wait and see what he does. But regardless, what he's shown so far is incredibly promising. His name, like you said, being up with those guys already, just so early in his young career, is outstanding, and I just cannot wait to see what the future holds for Cole Caufield. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you want to the channel. You guys have been supporting us like crazy. You guys are loving our videos. Even though the Habs are, having a bit of a downtime here near December and January, you guys are still there every single video supporting us, and we really appreciate it. I'm Juraj Slafkovsky for my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.